Let's talk about Severance Season 1. Hello everybody, welcome back to this stupid channel. Hello, how is everybody doing? I hope you're great. Today, I'm going to be answering your questions that you sent to me about Severance Season 1. Now, what a wild ride that was, and it's all been left on a cliffhanger. I'm super duper excited for Season 2. I actually can't wait to get this recorded, get this out to you, and then we can move straight on with the rest of the show and see what happens with all these characters. But before we do so, let's discuss the absolute wonders of Season 1. Let's discuss some theories, hypotheses, and predictions for Season 2 and what's going to be on the way next. And let's break down the show a little bit. Let's discuss what we enjoyed and give some opinions, and then we'll crack on with Season 2 as soon as we can. Right, let's get on into it. You guys gave me an absolute plethora of questions, so I might be here for a little while, but let's sit down and discuss the show, shall we? Come on. Just want to mention as well, if you do like discussing the show, Severance, as well as some of the other shows I've watched on the channel, like Arcane, Fleabag, and Blue Eye Samurai, there's a place you can come and do that with all of us. It's called the Discord. It's my Discord server. We've got designated channels for all of the shows I react to, as well as just spaces to hang out and do a bunch of other stuff. We have a book club. We have a little music channel where you can sit and listen to music, sports channel, hobbies, interests, fan edits, fan art, all that kind of stuff as well. It may be your kind of thing. If it is, I'll leave a link for it in the description. There is also a link to my Patreon there as well for some other exclusive content that you also might like. Just thought I'd let you know so you can check it out if you want to. There is so many questions here. That is so funny. Right, we're going to be here a while, but come and sit with me. Get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever it is that you want. Let's come and talk Severance. Right, let's get straight on into it. Here is the first question. It's a very simple question, but who is your favourite character in Severance? Well, if you're in the Discord, you will know I have a certain love for Helly, for obvious reasons. But I would say, in all seriousness, who is my favourite character? I would say from the onset, it was Irv. Irv was a character that really intrigued me, and I really, really like his etiquette and the way he presents himself at Lumon. At first you're like, oh, he's a real stickler for the rules, he's a real kind of square, but you actually realise he's probably the most emotionally intelligent, I'd say, out of the lot of them. And in my opinion, he's the most lovable character. What I would say is a character that actually grew on me was Dylan. Dylan, at first I was like, this guy's a bit bratty, he's a bit weird, like, not, I don't know, I just didn't warm to him that much. And then as Season 1 progresses, you realise how cool Dylan is and how he looks out for everyone else. So I would say my favourite characters, I love a lot of the characters in the show, including Helly, but I would say it's between Irv and Dylan right now, just in terms of characters that I've really warmed to and I really like. Yeah, between Irv and Dylan for me. I love how some people have got like way more than one question, so they start their comment with, okay, here we go. Right, Ruby, come on Ruby. Here we go. Why the colour coordination of outfits? What's the meaning? And are two people getting more in sync with each other? Interesting stuff, because you see this blend, right, of the red and the blue and the context of the blend of that. Some people say, is it a reference to almost the Matrix, the red pill, the blue pill? Lumon is very blue. PT as well has the blue and red striped sort of robe. So this idea of it sort of conflicting, and, you know, I think there's a lot to do with the outfits. I saw a comment, I don't know if this is true because I haven't looked it up, but I saw a comment that said one of the outfit, like, not designers, but like one of the people that work in costume, Helly's yellow dress that she wears in Defiant Jazz was a decision made by Helly's outie, Helena, to basically cheer up the innie. Which is interesting because, right, yellow is supposed to be a happy colour, and it's the first time you see a colour like yellow really in the show in terms of a clothing item. A lot of it's very blue and cold. A lot of the show is actually kind of colour graded to look very cold. And then you see those hints of like red, burgundy, and the deep kind of warm, almost blood-like colours as well. It kind of sets you on edge a little bit. You see that more with the outies. You see that with Devon and Rickon's kind of colour palette. And you see that with their house as well, sort of the wood tones. Is there two characters becoming more in sync? I think Helly and Mark became more in sync as you go along, and sometimes you can look at the ties as well. The ties kind of match up. There was can't remember exactly what it was. It was when Mark and the rest of the gang go to OND, and Mark has that conversation with Bert in particular, but all of the members of OND, and he sort of says something like, "We sit here every day. We want to know what we're here for. What we do." And him and Bert's ties are almost mirroring each other's. It's quite interesting to kind of show that. The outfits are really interesting. In terms of characters that sync up, I'd say I noticed Mark and Helly a lot. And in the finale as well, you see that sort of Helena wears like the blue tones that Helly would usually wear, but just in a different style. And you see the red flowers behind her in the bathroom as well. So I think there's probably a lot to go over and reanalyze that, but that's what I picked up on off the top of my head. What are your thoughts about what the reintegration sickness is all about? Petey died and said it had only happened to him. The reintegration sickness, I don't know, because is it more of like, I'm not saying it's, I don't want to say it's not real, but is it almost like a psychological trauma that drives it? Is it the sheer stress on the body? It's almost like a psychological illness that then leads to, you know, him having, I mean, what did Petey have? Did he have like an aneurysm or like a stroke or something like that? Was there almost something, Regabe, we believe it is, I think that was her name, or was it ever confirmed if that was Regabe that killed Grainer? I'm pretty sure that was actually the name of the character. The issue I had was like, did she try to do something to Petey's skull to get the implant out or something? You know, we know the implant was intact because Kobo went to retrieve it, so it's highly unlikely, but did they do certain things? You know, was she trying to scramble with the signals that it gives out or something along those lines? Could that have gone and caused some additional damage to his brains, the inner working of his body? Who knows? And then that goes on to cause the sickness. It's not actually them leaving Lumon or trying to override necessarily the implant. Is there something else they try to do afterwards, and then that in turn causes more problems on the body? I'm still not quite sure, but I wonder if it's more psychological illness at first and the physical stress on the body then manifests itself after the fact. I'm not quite sure, but maybe we'll learn more about that in season 2, hopefully. What's up with all the clock times? Any thoughts about it? Today while having dinner, crazy I know, I was thinking about the cult side of Lumon, and maybe there is a religious correlation to the Bible verses. Oh yeah, it could be actually. Because the Keir Egan handbook is very sort of biblical in the way it's kind of set up, isn't it, actually? The clock times, I don't know. You've got to realise the innies only ever see like 9 to 9:15, 9 to like 5:15 or whatever it is they go home, you know? So they only really get like 8 hours a day. Maybe for them, like, but you'd think they'd almost do like, instead of having a 12-hour clock, you'd think they'd almost just have like a timer on the wall for how long you're going to be here for today. But they don't. They keep the time lining up with the outside, which I think is almost, from the innie's perspective, that's almost disturbing. Is you, as imagine this as an innie, you will never ever see the hour hand on 7 or 8. Like that clock that you will look at while you're in the office every day, you will never see the clock hand on a 6, a 7 or an 8. You will only ever see it on the other hours when you are in there as the innie. You know your outie is out there at that point in time. So I wonder if it's almost there to put in perspective, to constantly remind them that their lives are so short. You know, we're saying, oh, it's time, it's something you usually have in an office building to keep track of time. They don't really need to keep track of time as an innie, because they only ever know the inside. So it almost makes me wonder, is it almost like a psychological manipulation to remind them that they're only here for a small amount of time, and that the innie gets the real life outside of what the clock is currently showing them? I don't know, but that was just a theory that I had, at least. Thank you very much, Ruby. Right, Sam is here. Hello, Sam. I have a question I've been dying to know, but it might be hard to answer. I'll give it a go anyway. Imagine that Severance is a real procedure and you've never seen this show before. Do you think there is any traumatic event or perspective that would lead you to personally want the Severance procedure? When I first thought about it, I thought, no, most people would probably be against it and would never. But then I thought about the different ways in which people are suffering every day. It seems like a lot of people might actually be interested in Severance for personal use. And when I thought about for myself personally, I actually could imagine some scenarios in which I might feel this would be like the only option of escape. Scary thought, yes, but fascinating. I agree. I think actually there may have been a time in my life where I went through a couple of things that I maybe would have, in that moment when I was in a depth of despair, would I have wanted something like a severance procedure? Maybe. We know, or it hints at, one of the women, Gabby, I think her name was. Yes, Gabby, because obviously when she turned, in the finale, when she goes, Gabby, this is Helena. Yeah, it is Gabby. We know there's a likelihood that she was severed during the pregnancy, so she didn't have to experience labour. it seems like an odd way, because then how does that affect the bonding between mother and child and all that kind of stuff? Is there a way for you to almost go through things in life? Well, here's the thing, because if you go through a traumatic event, like in your past, and then it wouldn't really help to have the severance procedure afterwards, because that's what Mark's doing, is he's trying to overcome grief and a traumatic situation with his wife Gemma, to ignore that and move on and try and create a different version of himself that gets an escape from that, which is funny to me. Because when you actually, not funny, but when you think about that, Mark is trying to escape Gemma's death. He's willing to create a version of himself that he's never going to actually physically experience as him. But he's willing to do it so that version of him gets an escape. Which is what made me think, how's that going to work in season 2? If all these characters are going to end up back at Lumon, because it looks like they get captured at the end, right? What's going to be the driving factor that sends him back? It's got to be that he wants something for his innie that he knows he can't get on the outside. So regarding traumatic events and would you go through a severance procedure, I still don't think I would. One, you've seen how squeamish I am. The thought of me going under a brain surgery procedure ain't happening, right? Firstly. But more than that, I don't think you'd ever get true relief. It's not truly sectioning yourself off to something, because you know a version of you gets relief from something, but you never will. And I think that in turn would end up eating away at you far more than anything else could in terms of trauma. I think the only way to truly deal with trauma is to deal with it the best you can and be in present and deal with it. The more you try to sever it from yourself, especially if that means creating a new personality, that you'll end up being resentful of that personality more than having to go through the trauma, in my opinion. But interesting perspective. I like that question a lot. That's good. This is Moose. The Moose's questions. I can tell these are right. You don't have to answer all these. Pick whichever you want. What do you think the meaning behind the blue and red colours are? So I briefly touched on this, but I don't know, because people are saying maybe it's to do with the Matrix, red pill, blue pill. Some people even saying political, like right wing, left wing. I just think it's contrasting colour. Because if you used to pick like true primary colours, well, depending on how you could do like red, green, blue, which is like RGB, or you could do like red, yellow, blue, which then makes Helly's dress more interesting, right? If you think about it from that perspective. But I think the red and blue, it's just, if you think of like a light spectrum, or if you want to put it as a colour spectrum, if that's easier to visualise, red is one end, blue is the other, right? So I think the contrast of red and blue is just to show you the sheer different ends of the spectrum in terms of how these people function. So you'll see, like I mentioned before, a lot of the Lumon colours, even Mark's house and Cobell, that environment is very blue, it's very cold and almost clinical. When you go to Rickon and Devon's, there's a lot of wood tones, red, warmth. So it almost shows that when you're in the blue, you're kind of numb to stuff. You're trying to tone everything down and be numb to it. But the red colours had that warmth. They had more of a human, present kind of feeling. So maybe that's what it is. But maybe in season 2 we learn more about what that contrast is between the red and the blue. Who knows? What's your opinion on Rickon and his book? Rickon is irritating, right? But he's very, very poorly self-aware, which can be very annoying, especially in that opening episode when they do the dinner party and there's no food and it's just obnoxious. But here's the thing. You actually trust Rickon to a degree, because he's not a bad guy. As far as what I can tell, like I said, we haven't seen season 2, so we don't know what any of these characters really are, because they may all change and shift as well, right? But with Rickon, you still trust him. He's obnoxious, he's annoying, but he's not awful. But like, if you said to me, would you rather sit and have a conversation with Rickon or with Natalie, right? Natalie, I would still pick Rickon. Rickon seems tolerable enough to deal with. And his book is absurd and stupid as well, like him. But he's unapologetically himself, and actually the book is what he's proud of, it's his work. He actually looks like someone who in his life has processed trauma in his own way and is dealing with stuff. I would say that's almost more of a triumphant thing than what Mark is doing in terms of going under a severed procedure. And I think Rickon is very polite in that regard, because he knows that Mark is avoiding Gemma's death. But he's always willing to say, Mark, I respect you and I have massive love for what you've done, and working with Lumon and being a severed user, you know, he actually tries to see Mark's perspective, whereas Mark, so basically he's more tolerant of some people than Mark is of him in some cases, right? Like I say, he's annoying and very poorly self-aware, but he's grown on me a lot in the series, and I'm interested to see if in season 2 there's anything else about Rickon that would be interesting to know. So Who do you think is the voice that we heard from the board? Someone new or someone we've already met? I don't know, because I was trying to work out whose voice that is. It almost sounds like Mark. So I don't know what that means, but like the voice on the board, I feel like it sounds familiar. I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like the voice on the board sounds familiar. But I have no idea who it could possibly be. I'm guessing it's somebody high up in the Egan sphere or somebody that works in the. But then does it even go beyond the Egans? Is it someone higher than the Egans and the family themselves? Who knows? We know they employ their CEOs through the lineage and the bloodline, but are the boards separate? Is the board something else, or is it also Egan? So, don't know. But I wonder if it's someone we've already met. It'd be a good plot twist if it is. What do you think is the purpose of the numbers? I have no idea. I'm still in my mind trying to work out what the hell. To me, I think it's all crap. I think it's bullshit. I think the work is nothing. I think this is almost a psychological experiment. I think the macro data refinement floor, the macro data refinement department and the severed floor is not true work. I don't think it's running or managing anything. I think it's almost like a floor to break and test people. To me, the severed floor seems more like a psychological test or an experiment on people as opposed to an occupation for people. That's my opinion. I don't quite know to the degree. You know, like the Stanford prison experiments, where they took a bunch of people, gave one people one role and one people another, and just observed how they interact with each other. That's almost what it felt like with MDR and OND kind of thing. I think to a degree, there's almost an element of human testing and sort of experiment going on here. Sick experiments, because it's putting real people in very traumatic environments, but that's what I wonder. When Helly's father said that she would be at his revolving, what do you think that is? I don't know. I pondered on that. At his revolving. Revolving almost means transition. It makes you wonder if that's what they would call a funeral or what you would call like a normal transition into a different area of existence. Who knows? Do we find out more about that in season 2? Tell me. Don't tell me. Tell me. No, don't tell me. No, don't tell me. Let's see if we find out more about that in season 2. We've got Maroon's questions. Here we go. Right. If you had to pitch Severance in one sentence, what would you say? I would say allow yourself to detach, or something where you could explain how you could sort of Severance in one sentence. I suppose if you was to really detach from your occupations and what occupy your mind, I would say. If you had to sum up in a sentence, severance is detaching from your occupation and your job, and also detaching from what occupies your mind. So it allows you to escape a version of yourself, as well as like your profession, is how I would put it. Don't know if that's quite good, but we'll go with that. If you could interview any season 1 character, who would it be and what would you ask them? If I could interview any season 1 character, I would interview Cobell, and I would ask them the simple question of, tell me everything that's happened in your life that's led you to this point. Because she's gone through something, trauma. I don't know, do we find out more about that in season 2? I think a couple of people said Cobell's story is quite interesting, so I'm guessing we learn more about that. But if I could interview anyone, I would, or I would ask Mark, like exactly, although he wouldn't open up about this, but if I could and I could get anything out of these characters, I would ask Mark, how did Gemma die? When was it? Did you sort of see it or something? Like, because if she does exist in Lumon and she was supposedly died, have they done something with her dead body and turned her into something that they can use at Lumon? If that's the case, how did he not notice if they've gone through standard funeral procedures or something? So I'd either ask Mark about what happened with Gemma, if he'd be willing to talk about it, or I feel like Cobell would want to explain her life to you. I would ask Cobell everything that's happened, and I want to hear her life story. I want to hear what got her so obsessed with the Egan element of life. That's what I'd ask. Were there any scenes or shots that really blew you away from a directing or cinematography standpoint? A scene that really, really stands out to me is the it's either episode 2 or 3, forgive me, I can't quite remember, but it's the one where like PT's disassociating and he's like stood in like the like it kind of shifts into the MDR bathroom because you see Irv kind of walk in. You know, and there's like this weird bit where it all kind of like distorts and then it all kind of flips backwards and forwards and then he goes PD like this. And he says something like, who's Cobell? Or he said something like, who's something. He says something to him. And the way they did that camera shot and stuff and they set that up, it's very seamless and it's very, very clever. There's a couple of things, but that's the one that stood out to me more than anything else. What's one theory you came up with during season 1 that you think might still be true? I can't even remember the things I've mentioned. What's one theory you came up with in season 1 that you think might still be true? I'd say it's probably that whole Gemma thing, in terms of, not theory, but like, if she did really die in a car accident, things happen to a body, right? For someone to actually go through something to die, she wouldn't have been in a good place. She wouldn't have been in a good physical state. So how is she so normal looking without any recognisable scars or injuries or anything like that as Miss Casey, who's like the wellness instructor, right? So to what degree, the theory is like Lumon must be able to do something to human bodies or corpses and bring them back, or regrow things, or it's got an amazing ability to keep you sort of looking young and alive or something. I don't know. They must be doing something in terms of cosmetics or something like that to get her back here as Miss Casey. You know, that's the bit that's getting to me that's so weird, is how is Miss Casey there without a scar on her face or anything, or no sign of visible injury or damage, yet she was supposedly someone who died by smashing into a tree in a car accident. That makes no sense. So Lumon must be able to do something with people that have gone through extreme levels of physical damage, if that's the case. You've mentioned the cars a few times. Do you think they have a deeper meaning to the story? I don't know. It's this weird thing where because when you look at the Lumon building, like the secretary who's downstairs in like the foyer when you walk in, they've got like a modern computer, but like the phone looks old. And the security guard, you know, the one that scans them before they go into the elevator when they put the lanyard on, their computer's not that old. It's sort of like the tech and the cars and stuff. One minute things look quite modern, the other things they don't. Is it directly relative to the story? I don't know. Or it could just simply be a design choice to kind of create this eeriness of... I think it's a good decision to make either way, because if you had modern smartphones or modern, like, imagine Severance in a shot's like an electric car, it would just completely ruin the vibe of the show. So maybe it's almost just a stylization choice to kind of solidify you in a point of time where you've got some cars that look like they're from the 90s, but sometimes it looks like they're from the 70s, and sometimes it's like early 2000s. And then same with the computers and the phones. To distort you, you don't quite know. Sometimes they wear like a digital watch, like a Casio watch, and it looks almost retro and a bit cool. So then sometimes they wear something more sleek and minimal and more modern. Maybe it's just to throw you off so you don't know what time they're in. Maybe that's the decision in the end. It is purely aesthetic, but to make you feel uneasy or not be able to trace when it is. Was there a line or monologue that stuck with you, either because it was so brilliant or completely unhinged? I think Cobell saying "yes, Daddy" has gone over my head way too many times, because there was a couple of people as well who was like, no, you're looking into it too much. There's nothing seductive about what she did there. She's saying it to him basically to be like, back off. You're like, you know, stop telling me what to do, you authority figure or whatever. No, you don't maintain eye contact with a random bloke that you work with and stare at him and say "yes, Daddy" in a weirdly seductive voice just for the sake of it. There was a weird tension between Grainer and Cobell. She was also dumbfounded when she found out that he was dead. Like Natalie said, he's dead, and she said, whoever's done this. She sort of, you know, she immediately got defensive and protective over Grainer. There's sort of points where she sort of leans on the desk in a very seductive way with Milchek or Mark or things. You know, so some people were like, no, you're looking into it too much. No, I disagree. I don't think I was at all. Cobell often seems to like weasel her way in and gets what she wants to. That was a line that really threw me off. The other Cobell one is when she screams, "We serve Kia, you child," or whatever she says to Mark. And he looks like he's going to cry. Yeah, Patricia's very good at just like being completely normal and then just going a bit crazy. Cobell as a character is so volatile. I think that was something that kind of took me back a little bit for sure. If you could take home one prop or piece of decor from the show, what would it be? And I can't say Helly. Okay. This is going to sound weird, but let me explain. I was going to say something between either the wellness room, the vibe of it is actually quite nice. It's quite zen. It's quite nice. Or like the concept of technically Egan's house, like a life-size house. Imagine that, but as like a little doll's house. I don't mean the full house with the bed and the mask and the dancers and the waffle party. No. I meant like if you could have like the Egan house but put into like a little doll's house. I think that would actually be quite a cool little item. Maybe if you want me to, I could get a letter to Lumon, because that could be a good perk they could start offering to their employees. It's a little replica doll's house of Keir Egan's property. Let me know, I'll send them an email. Why are the departments so isolated? Are they even real? I don't know. I've been wondering that as well. Why are the departments so isolated? I always wonder if they don't even need to be, they just do it to create a sense of tension between the employees. Again, if it was a psychological experiment on the people that work in there, then it makes even more sense. That there's no risk between departments or information being shared. They're just doing it to isolate them so much to see how they then react if people meet. The reason I feel there could be like an element of experiment to it, because you don't have that much security. You shouldn't be needing to watch people so much unless there's a reason to watch for small behavioural changes, and that would then lead more to like an experiment or a test as opposed to just an employment. That's what I think, at least. What are the goats for? I dread to think. Are they anything to do with MDR's numbers? I don't know. We know Lumon is almost into everything, but it's been hinted at almost like pharmaceuticals, tech. I think they've even mentioned something like... Did they mention Lumon medication or something? I swear in that first episode at the dinner party they talk about pharmaceuticals with Lumon. So I'm wondering almost if they're in like human testing, and then obviously like they'll test other types of mammals when they don't want to test things on humans. So maybe she says like Helly in the first episode said, "Are we livestock?" And then there's a concept of now raising goats, which is a livestock. So maybe they are harvesting something from these animals. I don't know, but did we find out any more about that in season 2? Maybe. Who knows? What do you actually think Lumon does? They say pharmaceuticals, but I didn't actually see your following question. I think they do a little bit of everything. They seem to have... they seem to be a very monopolised business, or cult, or family business, however you want to look at it. I think they've got people everywhere, in everything, politics included. So, yeah, I think they think Lumon isn't just pharma. I think it's tech, a bunch of stuff, probably. The departments on the severed floor are meant to be kept secret, as far as we're told, but there's very little to actually enforce this. Why do you think Lumon has so little supervision and security staff while investing so heavily in surveillance and overall infrastructure? Because I don't think they don't want more people to be interacting with the people. That's what I think. I think they want to create a sense of like an Orwellian state of you're being watched at all times, but they don't need them being watched at all times because actual humans are going to interfere with the test. That's my opinion and my perspective. Obviously, it may be complete bullshit, but that would make sense as to why there's just camera and surveillance and rules and guidelines. They're wanting them to abide to stuff, but not willing to directly enforce it with other people. You had Grainer, you had Milchek, Cobell technically observing them, but I think it's almost a case of let's just sit and watch them, and we'll step in as and when needed, but let's get them to just manage and micromanage themselves. Also, why do you think the floor is so big but almost completely empty? Who knows? Perhaps there is... if this is testing and sort of human testing to some degree, perhaps if things go well in their mind and they finish doing the jobs they all need to do, then they'll expand and they'll do more and they'll bring in more employees. They'll add more departments and they'll kind of test more, they'll add more to the mix. That's what I wonder is it's empty because it's still in its early days, perhaps. Thank you, Nixit. There's Nixit's questions. Right, Morpheus. Good God, we've got the man from the Matrix in here. There is something about Mark's motivation to undergo severance I find a bit odd, and I wonder what your take on it is. Okay. It's stated multiple times that he did it to escape the pain caused by Gemma's death. Okay, so yeah, this is what I was hinting at earlier. But from his outies perspective, that doesn't work. He never escapes it and just loses time during work hours. Devon says in episode 1, forgetting about her for 8 hours a day isn't the same as healing, but he never experiences forgetting about her, right? The innie gets an escape, but he doesn't, which is what I was talking about earlier. So the only one profiting in this regard from the severance is the innie. And in the season 1 finale, Devon says he hoped you'd be spared from the pain. Yes, that makes no sense, but is something Mark would have done for someone else. It's almost like there was a part of him that was like, okay, instead of drinking myself to sleep or whatever it may be, just to escape the pain, I'll create a version of myself that can function, go to work, earn money, but at least he's not aware of this wife Gemma. That's how I look at it. But it is odd, right? That's something that I would have found weird as well. Since he basically had to create this for someone first and give them a life of perpetual work, I wonder what good he saw being accomplished in that decision. In the end, it could still be argued that this was the only way for Mark to earn money. I think so too. I think he was almost in such a bad place where he couldn't hold down any other work that he was like, wait a sec, you're telling me I can go and earn a living and turn half my brain off every day so that I get less hours to deal with this shit while I have to be awake? I think that was more what it was in terms of the motivator. He was like, great, this other version of me has to work so I can get escape. I can earn a living, and then when I come back home, I can drink and then go to bed. And I think that was the main motivator for that, personally. Hey Claudie, got some questions for you. Okie dokie. They're quite long and hopefully not too overwhelming. Don't worry. I'll try and love them all equally. How do you view the innies as individuals? Do you consider them as separate persons from their outie? Are they their own individual, or would you consider them an extension? In the same way, I have to be careful here, but in the same way if you had someone who developed 2 personalities in one brain without a severed procedure, it's still the same person, it's the same physical form, but there are 2 identities there that could have completely different perceptions and opinions of the world around them, even though they're in the same host body. So, I see them as extensions of the outie, and the innie is just a small version that's like almost like if you imagine like a bubble and then a bubble attached to that bubble on the outside, that's how I picture the innies, personally. Considering the idea of nature versus nurture, memory plays a huge role into shaping people into who they are as they develop. Without those life experiences that outie has, should they can still be considered an extension of the bodies that they are attached to? See, that's an interesting place. At what point do you not become an extension if you don't know anything about the host you're attached to? That's a really good point. I hadn't looked at it like that. I still view them as that because at least the outie knows the innie exists and the innie knows the outie exists, but they don't know anything about each other. So they're aware of them, but they have no construct of how they think. So that's why I still think they're connected in one way or another. If innie Mark had a choice to continue his life with Lumon or leave and live life of freedom, which do you think he would pick? Now there's a part of him that's aware Gemma's still alive. He may have hope to sort of de-sever, to reintegrate and find her and leave Lumon. Or would he stay there knowing that she's there wanting to now only become the innie? So we're thinking along the lines of like, would Mark want to just go back to being outie Mark and forget his life at Lumon? Or would Mark rather prefer his life at Lumon and detach and get rid of Mark's life outside and stay there where he thinks Gemma could be alive? That's an interesting way of looking at it as well, I think. Do you consider reintegration ethical? Dr. Ragabi mentions the sin of Mark creating an innie without his consent to serve for his convenience. The presented solution to rectify this is reintegration, where the 2 halves of the person are then merged. However, there is no feasible way for Mark's scout to ask his innie for consent for the procedure to be done. With that said, is reintegration still the correct answer? Ooh. See, that's an interesting idea as well, is because reintegration would then... Ooh, actually, hang on. So say Mark's outie hypothetically decided to go through reintegration, then his innie can't consent to being reintegrated. So yeah, either way, you can't really get out of this now from an ethical standpoint for either of you, can you? That's really interesting, actually. Okay. So, see, Mark's outie didn't consent to being sent dormant and the innie going out. So the innie's now violated Mark's outie, like Mark violated the innie. Oh, that's an actual perspective I hadn't looked at before, actually, now that I think about it. Is reintegration still the correct answer? Do you think innie Mark would agree or disagree with the decision to reintegrate? I think if you can both agree, both forms of this person's psyche can agree they want the truth and are willing to do whatever they can to get the truth, then I think reintegration is acceptable for both versions of that person. Otherwise, it would be unethical on either of the innie or the outies. Good questions. These are getting deeper now. This is interesting now. Dan. I've really struggled pitching the show to people because however I describe it, it doesn't quite do it justice. The core concept of the show is so simple, but I don't think the creepy repercussions of such a thing comes across well until you watch the show. I agree, it's a very hard show to explain. I don't think it really sunk in that they'd be two separate people before watching. What's the biggest difference / thing that stood out to you compared to what you were expecting going in? How would you pitch this show to people in a way that doesn't flat out spoil the story for them? Oh, this is a good question. Sort of what stood out to me that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting the show to be a lot more surface level in terms of the discussions of things. It really delves deep. It questions a lot in terms of what's your perception of yourself when you don't know the full self. We see that with Bert's retirement party and his leaving party. It's a funeral. This is a version of person that's been brought into existence, told after, I think he says 7 years he works there, that he's now going out of existence and that he's retiring. No, he's dying. He's no longer going to exist. Things like that when Miss Casey says, I've been alive, I think she says something like 8 hours in total. And she says something like, that was my favourite hours or favourite amount of time I spent. I was watching Helly or I was with you in MDR. This concept that there is a fully grown adult human being that never leaves, and more than that, they are awake at most for like 45 minutes at a time. That's so sad. And I think it really got to me because I was like, holy fuck, these innies are... They're not even just occupational slaves in that regard, in terms of they are stuck there and they have these minimal perks. They're emotional slaves. They are dumped into these environments where they have to deal with stuff that their outies don't want to, in Mark's case. Bit like with the Helly situation, where Helena doesn't give a fuck that Helly's not happy. You stay there or I will make your life even more difficult while you're there. It's when all responsibility or accountability can be removed, what do you do to other people, even if that other person is a version of yourself? How far are you willing to screw someone over if it means you benefit, even if that person you're screwing over is you, just at different hours of the day? It addressed things like that really well and kind of went really deep on that kind of topic, which was very intriguing to me, and not something you could really even explain to someone about the show. You're just going to have to kind of let them figure that one out for themselves, But that was the thing that stood out to me more than anything else, I'd say. How would I pitch this show? I would say it's... The way I would describe it as a summary would be like, it is about a corporate building and a company that allows you to work there after undergoing a severance procedure where the person that works in the building is one kind of version of yourself, and the other gets to go home and have a life outside of work, and you can detach from your job. But I would describe it actually as, like, that's the plot of the show, but I would describe it as, if I was to describe the show to someone, I would say, it shows you what happens when people want to use a version of themselves to overcome something and detach, even if it screws themselves over in the long run. So it's almost like short-term emotional gain, but whilst being used by a large corporate company, which is way too close for home given the way we are in this world right now. But I would describe it almost as what happens to a person when they're at a breaking point and is given an awful solution to that, but is willing to go with it, if that makes sense. Rita's asking, have I read the Lexington Letter? If not, you can find it here on YouTube. So the Lexington Letter, and I think there's sections of Rickon's book, we're going to read at some point in the Discord. I think I'm probably just going to, in a voice channel, when I'm next in there hanging out with you guys, discussing the show, I'll pull it up on the screen, we'll give it a read, take a look at it, discuss it, and what I might try and do as well is just record that, and I'll put it on YouTube as well. So that'll be coming out at some point. I'm going to go over the Lexington Letter. If for whatever reason schedule's too tricky and I don't get a chance, it might not be something I record, but I'll definitely take a look at it as I head through season 2 for sure. Scorm. Hey Claudie, I've got 3 questions for you. Thank you, Scorm. First question, about the baby goats. Yes, those goats. What do you think is their purpose on the severed floor, and why are they not ready yet? Well, like I say earlier, I hinted at this. Are they a form of livestock? Are they using them for something, whether it be testing, or as they grow up, the goats, are they going to use them for milk or something, or host bodies to grow something, or who knows? And maybe they're not ready yet because they're too young and they have to become adult goats or something. That was my first impression, but maybe there's more to that. Do we find out more about the goats? Probably. I'm assuming we do. Second question. How do you think Irving's outie got his hands on all the information about the other employees? Yeah. Only the top brass of Lumon should have access to those. Yes. So this was something because I've since gone over the finale one more time. So I recorded my reaction, then I went through it again after I edited it. That really baffled me. How does he have all the information on the outies? That doesn't make any sense. It was mentioned to me in the comments. There's a point earlier in the show where someone says to Mark, I believe, something about a therapist, and they say a therapist with a funny moustache. And someone said, is it possible that Irv could be Mark's therapist? And that made me wonder, do these severed employees, because they often will pick something like a severed procedure because their outside lives are so gloomy, miserable, they're often overcoming a trauma, are these people likely to go to someone to discuss those traumas and confide in someone? Is Irv one of those people, and maybe is that why he became a Lumon employee in the first place? Because he had his own traumas to deal with, but his outie wanted to stay attached and sort of research that, so maybe that's how they were able to get access to names of people that are Lumon employees, and he's maybe doing his own detective work on his own time. That's something that I put together, but I don't know. I'd have to kind of really analyse that and look over it to see if there's any likelihood of that. But that was a little theory that was mentioned to me in the comments as well about, a Mark's therapist of some kind. If you had to choose one, what would be your favourite quote of any character in the season? As soppy as I am, I really do quite like the conversation between Mark and Helly when he says, "You're easy to pretend to care about." I don't know the full quote, but that conversation I thought was very cute. I liked that a lot. But I would also say, I tell you a quote that gets me, and I've mentioned this earlier, is the bit where Cobell says, "We serve Kia, you child." Because it was, you see it initially as like an insult of like, oh, she's just calling him like an infant or a child, someone a bit stupid. But then you realise the innies are only a couple of years old at most. So she really is referring to him as a child because it's like he's a child mind to her. And once that sunk in, it was almost like she was disciplining a child at like a daycare centre. And then my perception of what Lumon was shifted. So it was memorable for me. And it was probably my favourite quote because it kind of locked in something that I hadn't really noticed before. So I'd say that one of Cobell's. That, and probably when she started singing Kia, Chosen One, Kia, just because I don't think I've ever cringed quite so hard in my life. Probably that one. I just want your thoughts on what you think Lumon's overall goal is and what you think revolving is. Yeah, see, this was in the other question as well. I think, like I say, Lumon's overall goal, I'm thinking human testing or psychological kind of examining one way or another, and I think the revolving is a transition. Do you got like any form of cult or private organisation of that kind? There's sort of a hierarchy and an organisation to it. Maybe that's what they like the idea of doing, is having almost like a going up the ranks. Maybe it's not moving on or passing on as a human being. It's not like a funeral or a death. Maybe it's moving up a notch in the hierarchy of the Egan Empire. Maybe, who knows? Do you think the death of Mark's wife was orchestrated by Lumon, or did they take advantage? My current opinion is they took advantage of it, but I don't know. Do they make the cars as well? They make everything else, so they could have done something to the cars, who knows? In either case, what purpose do you think they're working towards? full human control, is my opinion. An ability to grow or have people, clones, duplicates, human testing, animal testing, just overall Orwellian control. And I think they're starting there through a corporate means, but in time they'll probably expand that further, hence why the political connections, in my opinion. The Egan family understands what severance is and what happens to people better than anyone else does. Do you think Helena was forced to undergo severance by her family, or was it something she willingly agreed to do? I don't know, I was still trying to figure that one out. I don't think she's happy with the family that she has, and I think they're pretty good at brainwashing people. I think we've seen that already. So maybe just pure emotional manipulation to try and get her to go through it. That seems likely, in my opinion. Bit of both. She was willing to do it, but because they'd kind of manipulated that and forced that upon her for years on end. In what way do you think Lumon will punish the Innies for their rebellion and the use of OTC? I dread to think. Though they've tried the break room punishments, they've tried a bunch of stuff and nothing's worked, so maybe they try a different approach. Maybe they increase the perks. We know he was trying to do that because he says like, I can give you what you want, Dylan, as he's trying to like get through the belt and work his way into the control room. Maybe they're just going to instead now up the incentives, increased pay or something. I don't know. Maybe a little blend of both. Become more strict, double down on punishment and make that even worse, but increase the incentives. So they'll do a bit of both. Threaten them more and then bribe them in the other way. That's how I think Lumon operate. So that's my best guess. Do you have a favourite moment or overall performance in terms of acting? Let me just check his name. John Turturro, who plays Irving, is amazing. Genuinely amazing. He's been remarkably interesting to me throughout the entire show, but as it's gone on, especially with the Bert kind of plotline, the way he amped up his acting, all of them are brilliant. Adam Scott, I think, as Mark, is amazing. There's certain things he's done where he comes across so volatile and damaged that you never quite know what he's going to do next. And I would even say, again, Patricia and her way of playing Harmony. Are we going to see more of the way Britt plays Helena? We haven't seen any of her really, Helena, but is she very, very different to Helia? Are we then going to see a different kind of acting performance from her? And then is there going to be a bunch of new characters that are going to shock me even more? Who knows? But I'd say John Turturro in particular, and the way he plays is pretty damn astonishing. And I would also say Adam Scott regarding Mark as well. We only got a few brief glimpses of some of the outies, but do you have a favourite? I think Irv's outie seems the sweetest. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'd say Irv's outie seems the sweetest. Helena seems like a bitch, but maybe she'll intrigue us even more. Mark's outie is very hot and cold, isn't he? So we don't really know what he's like, but I'd say Irv's outie's my favourite. He seems like a sweetheart, and he just paints all day long, and he's got a dog. So what's not to love? Christina, what do you think Cobell's motivation for keeping such a close eye on Mark, now knowing it wasn't Lumon putting her up to it? Ooh, because I don't think it was just almost like I think I've mentioned Cobell being like quite seductive and things. I don't think it was just that. I think there's something else. She looks like she's gone through something herself with the whole Charlotte Cobell, like sort of breathing tube or whatever, that sort of medical thing she has. So I don't know what it is in particular that she wanted from Mark or what the incentive is there. However, I do think there's something... Oh, what is it? I don't know. Perhaps she knew Gemma. Did she know Gemma? Or it seems odd you've got... I mean, I'm saying it seems odd. The whole show is odd. But you've got Mark, who now works at Lumon, right? You've got possibly the concept of Gemma. Is that a different version of Gemma? Is it a clone? Is it something, is it actually her? Or is it someone else that they've made to look like her to test Mark? We know Lumon can like Photoshop and doctor stuff, I think, right? Because we've seen some weird images. Are the images edited to make it? Is this all a psychological? Was Mark ever married in the first place? Have they implanted those memories in there? And he never had a wife to begin with? You know, is it all like sort of the way I at one point was picturing it? I was like, is this like Truman Show? Is Mark Truman Show like, you know, is he Truman in Kia, you know, instead of like Truman's universe? You know, that's what I was wondering at one point as well. Is it all revolving around Mark? Is he the psychological experiment here? Are they all acting into his game? Did Mark set this all up? But like, do you know what I mean? Like my brain runs with it. I think Covell's got her own personal, maybe morbid motivations. Maybe she likes the, because she says like, I'm something about prisoners. The really way the way to keep a prisoner trapped is to not think they're in prison. Or I'm paraphrasing there, but she's almost like, I'm doing a little test. She says that to Milchek, or she's like, I'm doing an experiment. I think she had her own personal motivations to see what would happen, how people would react and retaliate, their innies versus their outies. And she was probably doing that just to be intrigued. And I don't know, maybe she's almost doing her own test in the background. But I hope we find out more about that in season 2. And who is really behind all this? Is it all just psychological experimentation, or is there actually a job being done here? That's what I really want to find out. Alex, here's Alex. These are mine. Not that many. I'm a dummy who barely understands the show. Shut up, Alex. Shush. Right. What do you think could be the reason for Irv and Dylan to have done the severance procedure? Yeah, see, I was mentioning this earlier, right? Dylan seems... We don't know enough about Dylan's outie, but we know he's got kids, so maybe it's just a case of he just doesn't want to be like a father who works at home. Maybe he just wants to completely isolate from his family and his children for whatever reason, and that's the drive. Maybe he's had really bad job experiences before. I don't know. Like, maybe he's someone that don't like working, so he'd rather switch himself off for half of the day and not have to work. Maybe it's just that. Or maybe he did go through something traumatic and that's why he picked it. Irv, we saw the medals and I think it said dad, like dad's uniform. Did he lose the only family member he was close to? Did he go through trauma with his family and that's why he wanted to kind of get away from everything and isolate himself? Irv almost seems very militant, and I've almost wondered, did Irv serve in an army or military or whatever, and then this is what he wanted to do afterwards to kind of get rid of the trauma? Who knows? But I think everyone who goes through the severance procedure has had to go through something at least. So again, do we find out more about that in season 2? I hope so. What do you think happened to Mark's wife, and why is she a Lumon? I don't know if she went through that car accident, because you would see a mark on her, right? Like, you'd see something that wouldn't be quite right. So I don't know what she went through, but no, we'd have to see something. I don't know. Why is she at Lumon? I don't know. It makes no sense that she's there. So it's got to be a different version of Mark's wife. They must have done something to sort of grow or build a different version of Gemma. I don't know. I've got no answer for you. And I really, really hope we find out in the season 2, because I really, 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 really want to know. Now that you know who Helly R's outie is, have you had a chance to re-watch episode 1 to get a sense of her personality, and now you're aware she's an Egan? No. So since the finale, I haven't gone back and rewatched episode 1, but I did rewatch episode 1 at the time. Like, I was so hooked on it, I wanted to watch it like 2 or 3 times after I first watched it. But, no, but a couple of people pointed some things out in the comments to me that when I was reading through. They said when you see in episode 2 when Milchek is talking to her and he says, like, when we knew someone like you was coming, or we were so happy that you decided to be here. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's the bit before they do the brain surgery scene. And you can tell he's almost treating her like she's something special, so now that makes more sense. And I think you see Helly's almost got like a you're not going to tell me what to do, you're not going to boss me around, I'm not going to tolerate this. She's got almost like an authority kind of personality from day one. She's, out of the 4 of them, someone who doesn't tolerate what they're doing here to the innies from the beginning. Like, she's very standoffish and aggressive, and maybe that's her Egan side coming out all the way from the beginning. But no, now you say I might have to do a rewatch of season 1. Not before season 2, because I'm desperate to see that first, but all in all, I think when the show's done in my own time, I'll go back and go over stuff. I did mention in the Discord the other day, we did a little vote. I'll put it up on the screen here, which was the results. These are some content ideas that I have that I'd like to do when I finish the show. So basically on the channel here, in case you are new, whenever I watch a show, I like to do things afterwards to kind of learn more about the making of it, the production, learn a bit about the behind the scenes, the writing, the characters, music, whatever it may be. So here's some different kind of video concepts that will be coming up soon after season 2. And I think doing some rewatching would be good for some character analysis and breakdowns. So yeah, I will definitely go over the show at some point. Have a look at those little details now we know that she's an Egan, and probably season 2 is going to give us a whole other bunch of stuff to break down as well. So that sounds like a plan to me. In episode 1, you picked up a lot on the symmetry of shots and the weird changes of times in the clock. Did you notice any of these details later on in the show? And what did you think they would tell us about the characters and environments? As the show went on, I did focus less on the aesthetics and the framing and the shot and stuff because the plot got so heavy and I wanted to focus on that. But there was a couple of things I noticed. Predominantly, when they transition, so when they do that whole like morph thing, they tend to be in the middle of a shot like this. They tend to be framed in the middle, and then you have that sort of thing where the perspective changes. And it seems to sort of isolate them just face on with the shot when they do that morph and that shift. That was something I noticed. I don't know if they do it every time, but I'm pretty sure whenever they transition, they always lock you in the middle of the screen, and so you're always just seeing them facing you, isolated, which was quite interesting. Which was cleverly shown when Helly was attempting to get out of there, and you see that it around her neck, and it's also locked in the same kind of camera position. So it's trying to explain to you that it's hinting between she was going from innie to outie, probably innie to outie, maybe even twice if that elevator went up and down, up and down. So it was trying to insinuate there why Helly did that at the end of episode 4. I really like that detail of when they're transitioning between innie and outie, it isolates just that character usually, until the finale where you see all three of them sort of do that thing where they shift, and then it pans so that you just see Mark's perspective first. But usually they're always just, you just see one of them, but in that finale shot you see the three of them go through it all together, and it was nice sort of bit of continuity that then gets broken deliberately for that transition in the finale, which I quite liked. In terms of like the clocks and stuff, time seems very important. Also, where everything's so cold and wintry and snowy, because it's an overcast day, you very rarely can tell what time of day it is, and it mimics the inside lighting of Lumon. It mimics the severed floor where it's just stark white light that you've got no concept of time of day. You don't know what hour of the day it is. You don't know if the sun's at the high point in the sky, that it's midday, if it's morning light, evening light, nothing. And I like that because it sort of mirrors the outside of Kia, that snowy, bleak environment. It mirrors the inside of Lumon perfectly, so you never feel like you can escape. And that's why the scene when Mark's on the date, and they go also when they go to Rickon and Devon's, this sort of warm, natural, like almost golden lighting, or when they go to the lodge where Devon gives birth, that's why it feels so weird and homely. Something still feels off, but you almost relax a little bit. So the way they created a difference between warm lighting and white lighting, I think, was done very, very well in the show, just to create a real sense of like, you almost feel like you never leave Lumon, because everything, even outside, is so white and clinical and just ugh. So that was also something that I picked up on, and I liked that a lot. But what about people who are severed in the general public, like the politician's wife? Or when Helly's dad says that everyone will be Kia's children, if people are just severed in day-to-day life, what constitutes a time for your innie to be opposed to your outie, and who decides? Yes, good question. If Severance does become something outside of Lumon, to what degree can people use it? I mean, what are people just going to be like, oh, I've got to travel today, I've got to do a 2-hour car journey I don't want to do. Let me get the innie to do that. Whoops, turn it on. I'll get the innie to go and get stuck in traffic today, and then I'll switch back to me when I get to the destination. I'll leave a note for them to switch back to me. And at what point is that then going to cause corruptions in people's lives? Are people going to start using their innies for really mundane, stupid tasks? Because that's not going to help anyone, So, yeah, if Severance does become outside of an occupation like Lumon, to what degree are the innies going to be used? Are there people, like perhaps Gemma/Miss Casey, who are simply perpetual innies under Lumon's constant control? That's what I think. Could other characters be perpetual innies? And what are your suspicions or theories? That's my idea, is that they have these people that are so normal employees, like Milchek, Cobell, that aren't severed. They come in, they manage, they do the work they need to do, and then they go home, and they're the same people at home as they are in work. Then you've got the concept of innies and outies, you've got severed workers, then you've got this whole new thing, which is what I think Gemma is, which is essentially a concept of long-term innie. There is no outie at all, and their entire existence is entirely locked in Lumon, and they wouldn't know because the innie's got no concept for what the outie's doing anyway, so they would just assume that the outie goes out and goes home and sees their family or whatever. But I think there are certain characters that never leave, and I think Gemma could be one of them. We know that a little bit, don't we? Because Petey hinted at that, and I'm pretty sure Ragabe entered that idea into Mark's head as well. Or maybe it was just Petey. But I'm pretty sure the idea of a character that never leaves was mentioned really early on in the show, either by Petey or Ragabe. Can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was. How do you think season 2 will play out, and what are you expecting before watching? Oh, that's a big question, bro. What am I expecting before watching? This show could do anything. It could. The next season could start in a completely different space and then catch up. Who knows? Do they ever go back to Lumon? I don't know. I've got a feeling they do. I've got a feeling we're going to see that. It's so iconic, you know, the actual severed floor. I think they're going to end up going back there. What it's going to be like now, I don't know. Is it going to be exactly the same and they've got to try and get out again? Probably. How do you think season 2 will play out? I think they're probably going to get captured and have to go back there, and then to what degree are they going to try and break out there again? Or is Mark going to want to stay there because that's where he knows his wife is now? So he's almost going to want to stay there even more than leave. That's something that I'm wondering. Got a question from MD. Hello, Claudie. Hello, MD. What do you think would be the motivations for both Cobell and Milchick? More specifically, why do the two of them seem so devoted to Lumon? Do you think it's just money/power or something deeper? Something deeper. I think there's either blackmail or there's something that runs deeper in terms of psychological manipulation, and why they feel that this is so important to them. I think it runs deep. I have a theory that possibly because we know Cobell went to an Egan girls' school, I wonder if Milchick was as well. You know, imagine sort of like a school for very, very clever young students. They get the opportunity to go to this other place, almost like a recruitment. You know, they go to these more private forms of education as opposed to public ones or something, and they get sort of sectioned off, manipulated from a young age. And then from that point, they are devoted to Lumon. They want to work for Lumon or something like that. So I think it's the cult element runs deep, and I think because because Keir and the Egan family are so connected to everything from politics to possibly pharma and healthcare to education, I think the brainwashing starts early, and I think this isn't just a job for Milchick and Cobell. I think there's a reason that they want to be part of the Egan inner circle. And I think there's a quite deep reason for that I hope we learn more about. I've seen a hint that Cobell's story gets looked into a lot more in season 2. I wonder if Milchick's does as well, and what we'll see of him. That's what I'm intrigued by. Do you think it's possible that Lumon had a part in faking Gemma's death, fully expecting that Mark would take on the severed job to deal with the loss? Is that maybe a common way they hire? I don't know if they can really have, like I mentioned this earlier, did they fake her death? Maybe. I don't know, was they doing it deliberately? Or was Gemma never married in the first place, but it's a narrative they've told Mark now? That's what I wonder. You know, they could very easily Photoshop and fake stuff, but then that doesn't explain why then Devon would know about Mark's wife, and then she'd have to be faking it, so that also doesn't make sense. I think the easiest way of looking at this now, and what would be the most likely, is that Gemma went through something, maybe died, maybe didn't die, I don't know. What happened there, is that actually Gemma or is it a clone? But they took full advantage of it, you know, for a different reason, and then maybe just by chance, Mark then took a severed job. And after that, they worked out that this guy was married to this woman. Actually, let's see what happens if he works on this floor and, you know, in this department. And all. So, and then maybe Cobell wanted to explore more of that herself for her own personal gain, possibly. Why do you think Ragabe is doing any of this? I don't know. I was thinking about this the other day. To what point does Ragabe benefit from all this? I don't know. She must gain something. Something, somewhere. Perhaps it's a Helly Mark situation. Perhaps she was a member at Lumon who was not severed and she could sense what was going on, maybe got close or intimate with another employee and then felt obliged to help or save them or something. I don't know, is there more of an emotional connection or a love-based connection that drove her to this? Or is it just a fight for the truth? Does she know deep down there's something not right at Lumon and she's doing her best, like other people are sort of advocating for the removal of Severance? Was she sort of one of those people originally? I don't know. Do you think that Mark's girlfriend slash date, Alexa, I think her name was Alexia or Alexa, is involved in any way? No. No, I don't. I think we would have seen more of her. No, I really think she is just actually quite a void character in the show. But I think it's clever because that you always look into it thinking maybe she is. But as of right now, no, I don't think she's anything to do with it, personally. Why do you think they get such cheap little prizes? Because they don't know anything else. The innies have got no concept of what a perk is, they've got no concept of what joy is. Plus, they're very childlike in terms of their minds. They're very young mentally. So you can kind of jangle keys in front of them, but they'll be impressed, is what I think. Without knowing what you know so far, does severance seem like a good idea at all? No. There is no part of me that goes through a severance procedure. One, I'm too squeamish, so I wouldn't want to. But also, I personally, in my core, I don't feel that running away from trauma is a good way of dealing with it. And will you please continue to tell show elements to fuck off? Yes. Yes, I will continue the fuck off. I will consider the what and I will consider the huh. And there'll probably be a lot of turning away if there's something I don't like. That will all be continued in season 2. Yeah, praise Claude. All right. Hello, Travis. I'm curious to know what you think Devon's reaction will be to what Mark said at the end of the episode. I would also love to know where you think the first episode of season 2 will pick up. Thank you. Can't wait to see your season 2 reactions. Thank you very much, Travis. I think Devon's going to be quite... Well, is she going to be very nonchalant? Is she not going to... Devon to me seems like someone who's quite inquisitive because we know she wanted to look into Gabby when she could sense that she might have undergone a severance procedure when she was trying to work out why that woman was being so weird with her. So I think she's going to be quite inquisitive and grill Mark, or she might even go to Lumon. Does she turn up at the building wanting to see him or something? I don't know. I think Devon's going to be very... I think Rickon's going to be dismissive because he always is. And he's going to be way too focused on himself. But I think Devon might be quite personally inquisitive. And maybe Mark is now as well. Because he trusts her. So if she says, you said, if he sees her say, you said... Devon, she's alive, about what... Surely Mark at that point is going to be like, what do you mean, is that what I say? So I think he trusts her enough to listen to her because he was willing to tell her about PT. So I think Devon's going to be quite inquisitive and I think Mark is now going to be as well. That's my take, at least. I'd love to know where you think the first episode of season 2 will pick up. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to carry on with the outies. When they go back to being outies and the innies get turned off because the OTC gets turned off because Dylan gets basically thrown to the floor by Milchick. So my guess is it's gonna go to the outies next, but I don't know. It could take a complete hard left turn, so I don't know. Matilda, hello Matilda. I have 2 questions for you. Okie dokie. If you had to come up with a new Lumon department, where would you have to work as an innie and what would it be? Ooh. I think a cool Lumon department would be perk design and it would be PD, so perk design. And I would work there as an innie because I think it'd be quite fun. And you're just designing games and perks and silly things for the innies. And you could design everything from the packaging to the food and stuff that's in the vending machines and the tokens. I'm a creative person. I like design. I like coming up with stuff. So maybe not perk. Maybe we need a good acronym. So we need something like P and something. P and... Say it's P and G. Perks and gifts. Perks and gifts. So designing stuff for the innies that they win or that they get to have. And designing the packaging or the extra food or things in the Lumon. Yeah. Perks and gifts. P and G. If you can come up with a funnier acronym, let me know. Comment it below or let me know in the Discord. We already have... the Discord is currently called Clumon, which is play on my name. So if you have any department ideas for Lumon, we currently have Lumon staff meetings through the voice calls with everybody. But if you do have any ideas for a Lumon specific department that you'd like to see in the Discord, bring it on in and we'll put it in there. What do you think will happen to Miss Cobell that made us so unhinged? It was weird. It wasn't like she was just being fired. It was like she was being completely ostracized from a cult. So I don't know. Does that actually like do something to her in terms of shorten her lifespan or put a mark on her back? I don't know. But she reacted way weirder than you would do if you just get fired. So there's something else there. I don't know what it is. It's hard for me to speculate what it is. But I think there's a lot more to that for sure. Since he's the only character we frequently see both sides of, do you think you like Mark's innie or outie more? Both have their own annoying qualities, but I'd say Mark's innie is actually, at this point of the show, I've got a hint it's gonna. I've got a feeling it's gonna change because if he now knows that Gemma's alive, I think he's gonna like kick into high gear and be very defensive. But I've got a feeling that Mark's innie's a little bit more of a nicer guy who's willing to fight for the truth than Mark's outie, because Mark's outie's quite dismissive. So I would say I prefer Mark's innie just that little bit more. But both, in their own ways, can be annoying sometimes in terms of how dismissive they can be. And Mark's innie is a bit of a stickler for the rules sometimes as well. If you could send a message to your innie, what first-time experiences would you tell your innie to prioritise seeking out? Ooh. See, the innies never get to experience anything like a shower or a bath. That could be some perks we could come up with at P&G, let me know. Thinking like a Roman, you know, like in Arcane with Ambessa in that bath. Like, I'm thinking like a Lumon community bath, and then no, actually that sounds awful. Oh God, at the Keir Egan house. Oh, in the perpetuity wing. Oh God, I picture it. First time experiences. I mean, there's a couple I could mention, but I won't. I would say the simple things in life. Because they live their entire lives in like these suits and work outfits. But put them in a fucking onesie, man. Put them in some pajamas. Let them sit on a couch, you know? That's what I'd go with. Because they never get to experience just like simple comforts, like a comfortable chair. So I would say the simple first time experiences and pleasure would be relaxation stuff. Nice bath, lay down on a nice memory foam mattress, pajamas, that sort of thing. That'd be the first thing I'd suggest for them to do. What do you think is going on with the board? Who are they and why do they never say anything? I don't know. See, we mentioned this earlier, right? Who is the board? Is it someone we know as a character? Is it a familiar character? Is it not? I don't know who the board is, and I don't know why they're always so quiet and so dismissive. But I've got a feeling we're going to know soon enough. And I think, why do they never say anything? Because I think it would give away who they are. So I think they've got to be people that we know. And I'm wondering, is it one of the severed workers or something? Is it actually them? Are they almost doing this to themselves? Is there somehow the outies talking to themselves? I don't know. Like, I'm trying to picture it in my mind, but I'm wondering if it's a version of them or just some more Egans that we don't know about yet. Some other pivotal Egan members, possibly. I know this is not a question you can answer at this point, and neither do I. But what type of data is MDR actually refining? See, this is what I mentioned. I don't think it's anything. I think it's just all the ploy to keep them busy. I think the real work is testing and psychological breaking of these people. And I think that's the real job there, personally. Karen, hello. My question isn't about the show itself, but about your experience watching and reacting to it. Okie dokie. How is it different from the other shows you've reacted to on this channel? I've noticed you didn't pause as much. The show makes it almost impossible to predict and explain certain things, which is something you usually do. Yeah. So my reaction experience was very different. It was a lot more drawn out. I had to let things play out a lot more, and I would only really pause at the end of scenes. I wouldn't pause because, like with Fleabag, I would pause to laugh because there was something so funny, you know. Or with Blue Eye Samurai, there'd be a twist, you know, a fight scene. You'd have to pause just to come down from the fight scene. With this, it's a bit different. You have to really let it play out, sink in a little bit, or even rewatch a line, like what they say, or re-listen to the lines, and then actually, you know, break it down in your mind and then say something and comment on it. So it did change my reaction style a little bit, for sure. Also, I noticed that some details you missed while reacting you later picked up on in the intro of the next episode. Yeah, I'm guessing that's partly why you mentioned rewatching some episodes before moving on. Do you do that with other shows as well? No, never. So I never sat and rewatched Fleabag, Arcane, or Blue Eye Samurai episodes. This is the only show that's done that, has made me actually want to go over stuff again before I release it to see if there's anything I've missed, actually. So, bottom line, how was your experience? I'm loving it. The gory stuff to begin with was getting to me because I was like, am I going to cope with this? And I really want to be able to break this show down and understand it. So, yeah, I was worried about that initially, but no, I'm loving this. It's amazing. I'm really, really enjoying it. And it's actually, I'd like to do more I mean, I don't know if there is any shows like this, but I'd like to do more complex shows on the channel and react to stuff like that. So, yeah, I can sense a shift now of me wanting to do more of these intricate and complex shows in terms of reacting stuff, because I'm on a bit of a kick now. This show's kind of made me want to look at more like this, for sure. Also, now that you've seen season 1, and I believe you'd agree it's a wonderful show, why do you think it's gained more visibility only after season 2 was released? Because as a show, I think it's hard to explain to people. It's probably, you know, I mean this in the nicest way possible as well. The people in the show look very normal. They look quite mundane. It's the show is eerie and intriguing and wonderful, but if you make a trailer of it, it's not immediately eye-grabbing like that of Blue Eye Samurai or Arcane, which is bright, visually stimulating, and it's all kind of like, bah, it's in your face. You know, like, it's so captivating and eye-catching that that's going to do much better at grabbing initial attention. I think what's really made the show scale and go further after season 2, from what I'm aware, is the writing, and the show was so good in season 1, it got such good feedback that then made everybody come back for season 2 that had watched season 1, and then everyone had brought other people along with it because they'd said how good the show was. So I think it took a little bit of a time to catch on, because I think the more complex a show, sometimes they miss that initial market boom, because it takes people a little while to realise how good it is, if that makes sense. Any theories about what the goats are for? Like I said earlier, I don't know, but I'm guessing something to test or use in case they don't want to use innies or outies, and maybe to harvest something, like they're a livestock, just because of what Helly said in episode 1. Okay, we're getting there. We're on the home stretch. I can sense it. How long have I been recording for? 92 minutes. Good stuff. I'm heading towards a full innie workday. Yay. Questions from Trouble. Here we go. How do you think Milchek came to his employment at Lumon? His position seems to be the type of thing that would require one to be a true believer. Yeah, so I hinted at this with the Cobell and Milchek question. I think they're brainwashed from quite a young age, and I think that's what draws them in. And I think there's something more than just an occupation there that makes them want to be there, personally, yeah. Any thoughts on the whole they will all be the children of Keir thing? Like, if there is a full-time severed employees that don't know they're severed. Yeah, I think that's the overall plan, it seems, right? Is Lumon want control, the Egans want control. I think it's something along those lines, is they want everyone to have these implants. They want a capacity of sort of Orwellian control and an ability to control a population. And over time, everyone's going to buy into the Egan principles and doctrines that they've created, and everyone's going to want to be severed because it's the right thing to do. You know, I think they're really trying to break into the politics and brainwash everybody to bring that into full fruition, is my opinion at least. I highly recommend listening to the free download of the Lexington Letter. Yep, I plan to, like I say, read it. There's also moments that reveal great sensitivity on the part of Rickon, especially in regards to Gemma and Mark. I'd love to hear your impressions. Okie dokie. Anyway, I wonder what your top 3 reveals from season were, and your impression of that scene in the bathroom between Helly and her father. What are the similarities and differences you'll see between Innie and Outie Mark? Also, do you feel that Cobell personally cares about Mark? Okay, let me start the end question and work my way back. Do I think Cobell personally cares about Mark? Yes. I actually don't think it's just for personal gain. I think she actually cares about Mark. Even Helly and Helena, I think there's almost an element of care there, but it almost seems like fear. I actually think she is sweet on Mark, not in just a sexual or seductive way. I think there's something else she almost feels guilty for or something, so I think there's a link there. What are the similarities and differences you see between Innie and Outie Mark? Both, when they find something that they don't like, they'll instantly go against their own, and they'll go cold, and they'll be very dismissive, which can be annoying to sometimes, like as a viewer, because you're like, oh, come on, Mark. But in terms of similarities, they're both also very protective. So Mark is very protective of Devon and is still and protective of himself, but he's willing to still stand up for the right thing in one way or another. And Innie Mark is very protective of his family. So Mark's protective of his family outside, even though he don't like Rick, and he still looks out for them and wants to be part of their life. And Innie Mark is also very close and protective of his work family. So that's something I noticed as well. What are your top 3 reveals from the season? Ooh, top 3 reveals. I'd say the top reveal. Actually, what is the top reveal here? No, here's my 3 reveals that are actually for me the biggest ones off the top of my head. There may be some I think about later, but I would say that Helena Egan, because we know she's Helena and not Helly R. We learned that in about season 3, episode 3 or 4. It's not that it wasn't a shock, because it was, because I was like, holy shit, she's an Egan. But it's in the top 3, but there's other ones that were more shocking to me initially. I'd say that Helly R is Helena Egan is a pretty big one, obviously. The other one that shocked me is obviously Gemma being Miss Casey. But the other, which is the brilliant one, which is the Cobell reveal at the beginning in episode 1, that's brilliantly done. And intertwined with that is when she turns up and is the maternity nurse, the breastfeeding advisor, whatever she is there, lactation consultant, whatever she is. When she shows up there and starts taking care of the baby, that's weird. And that was a real kind of no. But yeah, I'd say there's loads of reveals, but I would say for me the main ones are Cobell's reveals in the show, particularly when you realise that she's Mrs. Selvig and she's Mark's neighbour at the beginning. Gemma being Miss Casey, and obviously Helly R being Helena Egan is my top 3. All women, actually, now that I think about it. Is there any guy reveal? I suppose an interesting reveal would be that, Irv is interested in pursuing Bert and the concept of homosexuality there, which was really intriguing. Something I will mention, because I mentioned this with a friend who loves the show, the interesting thing there is when you see in the finale, Irv goes to Bert's and he turns up at Bert's and you realise Bert has a partner. An interesting thing for me there would imagine if Irv had showed up, right? And he sees someone in the window, but he can't see who, and they realises it's Bert, and he goes to walk to the door, and then someone walks out. Imagine if it wasn't a man. Imagine it was a woman. So imagine, I was thinking about this, it could be an interesting sexuality exploration, which is that Bert outside of Lumon, has a wife and a family, but inside, Bert's innie is willing to make an emotional connection or a sexual connection with a man. And then that made me think, is sexuality different for innies and outies, which would be an interesting concept to explore, I think. If you was to completely dissect someone's personality and they was able to make different decisions without having previous memory, would you take different pathways in life in terms of, would the innies dress completely differently if they didn't had to go and work at Lumon, or would they still make the same kind of choices? Would Irv's innie wear a leather jacket if he wasn't Irv that had to show up at the office every day? Would they make different emotional connection decisions, whether that be through platonic friendships or sexual relationships? Would innies explore different things about themselves if they didn't have all the previous memory and stuff that the outies had? And that was something that I was talking to a friend about and we were discussing. It would be an interesting element of the show if they would be willing to include it. So, yeah, that was something that stuck out to me as well. Do you imagine or anticipate any arcs for our main characters moving into season 2? Ooh. Do I imagine or anticipate any arcs for our main characters moving into season 2? I think Mark is going to have to address Gemma's death. Now that she's possibly alive, I think he's going to have to come to terms with the fact that she might be here, and he's going to have to face things he doesn't want to face, whether it's outie or innie Mark. I think Helly R and Helena are going to be... It's going to be interesting because Helena is going to be stuck up and a bit of a problem because she's an Egan. She's got that personal values that's been ingrained into her brain. How's she going to deal with her innie being such a strong character? Is that going to almost inspire her because she knows that she's now so strong because her innie's so strong? Or is that going to eat away at her because she feels like she's almost losing control to this stronger version of herself? Is that going to make her more volatile and dangerous? I don't know. And I think Cobell's going to have to face some things about herself that she probably doesn't want to as well. So those are my three characters I'm watching more than anything else: is Cobell, Helly, and Mark. Hey Claudie, Casper here. Hello Casper. Here are my questions. Okie dokie. What is the MDR numbers? Like I say, don't know. To me, it almost looks like a video game, but I'm guessing it's almost an experiment, like I've mentioned before. Why is Rickon and his following so weird? Ooh, good question. I don't know if he's weird or if he's just unapologetically himself. I think Rickon is an interesting one, right? Because it's like he is weird, but he's no weirder than all the other people. I'd rather sit with Rickon than that politician and his family. So he is weird. His following's weird, or are they? Are they actually people that are very awake to the dangers of severance and all that kind of thing? And you know, he just doesn't want anything to do with it, and that's why he's so strong and passionate about what he believes in. I don't know. What is the testing floor? I don't know. I dread to think. This is why I think there's more to it in terms of an experiment aspect as well. You know, there's got to be something more to it in that regard. Have you wondered about Mark's outside housing? Is it just another severed level? Ooh, yeah. See, the housing and stuff, it is owned by Egan's, you know, it's like it's still got that vibe. So, do they ever really leave Lumon? Remember, PT was like really scared because he was like, the TVs are watching or they're watching us through the screens. Is that happening even outside in their own homes, you know? Do they ever really leave Lumon, or is it Orwellian in that sense where it's sort of everything's watching them? Good, it's a good thing to think about. Am I the only one seeing creepy Scientology vibes? No, we've all been seeing creepy Scientology vibes. No, we're all seeing it. We're all seeing it, Casper. Gilbert, will you demonstrate your devotion to Keir by adopting Helena Egan's hairstyle? Do you think I can pull it off? I don't know if I can pull off like an Audrey Hepburn bangs. I mean, I've got a big enough forehead as it is. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to cover it up. Like you mean like the bangs, like the cut up to here? I don't think so. I don't think so. I won't demonstrate my devotion to Keir, but I will. What can I do? I will sing Keir praise Keir. No, I won't. I won't sing. Oh no, I won't sing Keir chosen one Keir. What could I do? I will. I'll. I'll take that painting down and I'll make a new Keir Egan painting. That's what I'll do. Promise. Definitely. That's what I'll do. Maybe the colour though. Maybe like a ginger sort of auburn colour might work on me. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I quite like her wardrobe actually. She's got some quite nice shirts. Anyway, Richard. Hi Claudie. Hi Richard. How much do you think the outies are paid for the innies work? How much should they be paid? Ooh. Are they paid like an average salary in this reality, or are they paid more? The thing is, like, they don't look like they're paid well because they don't live in sort of beautiful housing. We know Rickon and Devon are quite successful because they've got a beautiful home compared to Mark, and yet they know that they couldn't even afford the big luxury cabins. They went with one that was more affordable. So, no, I don't think Mark's paid well at all. I don't think they're compensated for their work a lot at all, going by where they live. I think it's probably just standard average wage in that reality. And how much should they be paid? I think they should. I don't know. They should be paid probably a hell of a lot more than they are. They need a vacation every now and then, I think, as well, especially from wherever they are. It's gloomy as hell. Will you enjoy each question equally? I'll do my best to. I've been trying, I promise. Maybe I need another wellness session. Say some nice things about me and my outie. Your outie likes answering YouTube questions. Pick your favourite mystery in season 1 that you hope will get answered in season 2. Who the fuck is Gemma and why is she like alive? That is, I still don't get it. I still don't get how, if you've been in a car accident and your partner has like, you are dead, they've had a funeral, how she could ever possibly be alive. It must be a clone or something, or they're somehow able to, I don't know, they're somehow able to build new people. I don't know what it is, but that's something I want to get answered as soon as possible. Is who is Gemma? Like, who is Gemma and Egan? I don't know. Maybe Mark's just got a thing for Egan women, or something like that. You know, is she more than just Mark's wife? Is she something as important as Mark is to them? Who knows? And why pick Gemma? Why has Gemma become what I think is an innie that never leaves? Why her? Because she is someone who's presumed dead, so no one will be looking for her, which is a scary concept, but that's one I want to get answered quickly. O-Town, I have tried now over several attempts to put together even one question that doesn't ramble or go off the deep end. I cannot. Not for this show. Not yet. So I will just wait to see what the others have asked. Thank you, O-Town. What a sweetheart. Okay. Oh, a question from Raven, my Discord admin. Hello, Raven. Pigeon, as I call him. You can't call him Pigeon, though. Only I can. I'm an Egan in this reality, and I'm allowed to call him what I want, but no one else can. Anyway. I didn't know you'd actually put a question on it. Raven has asked, who recommended Severance to you, and why didn't they warn you ahead of time about the gory bits if they knew you were squeamish? Seems like a very insensitive thing to do. It's because you recommended the show to me, bro. It's because you recommended the show, and you didn't tell me about the gory stuff. The wonderful Raven recommended Severance, as did a few of you guys in the video suggestions in the Discord. You put the show in there, and you guys all commented and said Severance is really good. And it was like 1 or 2 days after Raven had initially mentioned it, and I was like, bro, everyone else is now recommending the show as well. And he was like, awesome, now you should definitely watch it. So Raven was the initial recommender of this show, and why didn't he warn me about the gory stuff? But it's fine. It's fine. I was squeamish and struggled with it initially, but hey, it didn't stop me watching the show. The show is that good, I overlooked it, so I'm fine. And it seems like a very insensitive thing to do. No, it's not an insensitive thing to do. I would say taking possibly a corpse and turning it into an innie that never leaves is an insensitive thing to do. So you're fine. You can still be my Discord admin. We're done. We're done with all the season 1 questions. My innie can go home. I have now got to... Actually, no, I might stay as innie because I've got to edit this. And I might make her do it and not me. So, thank you very much to everybody who sent in a question. I really, really do appreciate it. I will get season 2, episode 1 to you as soon as possible within the next couple of days. Just want to let you know, on the Patreon there are full reactions, and they come out roughly 24 to 48 hours earlier than the other episodes. So if you want early access to full reactions, I'll leave a link to the Patreon where you can check that out if that's something that would appeal to you. Come and join the Discord. We sit there and talk all the time about different things: Severance, Arcane, Blue Eye Samurai, Fleabag. We've got fan arts, fan edits, music, book club. Book club's pretty cool. If you like that kind of stuff, you want to hang out with some like-minded people, maybe sit and chat with me, I'll leave the link in the description. Come and hang out, check it out, and I'll see you there if I see you. Thank you very, very much to everyone who sent in a question, and I'll catch you very, very soon. Take care of both your innie and your outie. Praise Claude, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.